Hey now, welcome to the Dirty Side of the Track, America's leading Formula One podcast. I'm Brian, that's Rob. It's week 464 of this new spring break off season. Welcome. We're happy you're with us. How you doing, Rob?
Doing really well. It's really looking forward to today's episode. It's going to be a weird one because I've got some really over the top, Rob got too excited stuff, and I'll be up here in terms of the emotional roller coaster, and then the kind of the meat of what we're going to talk about is it's kind of pretty tragic. So it's going to bring us right down, but it's the roller coaster that is the dirty side of the track. So this this week we're going to do news and social featuring some non-famous news, which is me cycling around Montreal track.
I'm
And
excited to
then,
hear about this.
man, you've gone crazy on the video vault. That thing is, we're not even going to be able to shut the door. As soon as we open it, there's just going to be videos like spewing out everywhere. We've got a cool little Cadillac corner story. And then we have a Vale's Tales. And I was going to say I won't give away who it is now, but probably the title of the
Yeah,
episode or the
they've
thumbnail has already
noticed.
done it. So it's going to be the tragic tale of Jochen Rindt, which Brian pulled this one together. I will admit, I didn't even really know anything about him. I'd even missed him in, I think, a BBC quiz that I'd shared with you, which was to name all of the world champions that there have been. I only missed three, and he was one of them. So I've loved reading all this stuff that you pulled together for today's thing. So I'm really looking forward to diving into talking about him because it was sad.
It
Sad,
is.
but with a sort of happy-ish ending, which we'll get to. But
Yeah. Yeah,
right,
definitely. I'm excited. Let's get
let's
into the news.
news and social.
Yes,
Here we
sir.
go. F1 for Dummies, Dirty Side Edition.
I mean, let's be honest. We are dummies and we are the dirty side, so it's perfect. You teed this up
Exactly.
perfectly.
There is some stuff that has been exploited that I don't really understand, and it's been shut off. So here we go in classic Dirty Side styling. F1 cars apparently have a magic mode for when the car is in trouble. So this magic mode bypasses the mandated power reduction demands that need to be followed. Yeah, mandated power reduction.
Right.
Uh, Normal behavior states that power needs to be reduced by 50 kilowatts for every second to avoid a sudden drop off in performance, and you can't just go max deployment. Whatever that means. Magic mode allows them to basically turn this off and run at max deployment in case of emergencies and the car can limp home. Okay, so now I'm starting to understand. There's something with the
Right.
battery that is limited in most situations, but they've got something where they can bypass it in case the car's in trouble. Fine. Cunning F1 teams, and we're looking at you here, Mercedes and Red Bull, have found a way to exploit this. So apparently, when you're able to turn off the MGUK, which is what, Brian? Which part's that again?
Battery.
Is it? It created a potential loophole where you could exploit the use of the battery. So the FIA came out and went, we know how to do this. We know how to stop you exploiting this. We're going to put this mandatory directive in where if you do turn off the MGUK, then you'll be locked out of using it for 60 seconds. So no one will do it because your car will be a rock for 60
Right.
seconds.
It's like I
Well,
think it's like like it converts it to the battery power is what it does. It's like the kinetic recovery. That's what the K is, I think.
Maybe. But anyway, what Merck and Red Bull worked out is that as you charge the line in quali, who cares if your car is locked out for 60 seconds? Because all you want to do is limp home anyway.
Right.
So, what they sound like they were doing is that they were turning off, they were using magic mode just as they were coming around towards the end, which allowed them to do maximum battery deployment and not have to worry about all this other stuff that I don't really understand, and allowed them to kind of sprint for the line a little bit more than everybody else. So, it wasn't a huge thing, but now sources have revealed that the FIA have taken a look at this and they've come up with some ways to kind of mandate shutting it down, mainly on the basis of safety, which I guess, because what they're saying is if you do then go into limp mode after you've crossed the line, so you're now down to sort of a snail's pace and somebody behind you is on the hot lap, it might introduce too many of those closing speed problems that we saw with the crash last time out. So
Yeah.
they're basically having this thing where they're going to come along and say, right, we're not going to tolerate this being used. This magic mode cannot be used for anything other than emergencies. So they're going to shut the whole thing down.
I
So I
mean,
think I did a really good job of explaining what all of that meant.
it's par for the course for us. I think you did a great job. I'll say this. Here's the way I read this news this week. Mercedes and Red Bull had a trick that they were doing that the FIA is shutting down. And I didn't understand enough of what I read, so you've done a better job than my brain was able to accomplish, so thank you. But at the same time, when I first read it, I'm like, wait, is this the compression ratio situation? I didn't know Red Bull had that. And it's not. But then the next part of me says, okay, so if Red Bull was doing this, they weren't doing particularly well with it. It's not like they were with Mercedes at the front. So does that mean Miami's going to be even worse? Like, I'm just curious. It's not like they were putting the trophies in the cases every day. So
It's a good point.
I mean, it'll hurt Mercedes, but I think it's going to hurt Red Bull worse, is the way I'm taking it. They had less to play with.
Yeah, talking to Mercedes, Kimi is a rising star. As we talked last week, I kind of, with the midfield, I'm out there thinking that he could win this and beat George. Well, he's now moving into realms that he probably never even thought possible. A Topps trading card of him sold for over $200,000 at an auction. So 201,901 to be precise. It also included his signature and a cutout from a race-worn suit. So really, it's probably the signature and the suit that was worth more than the trading card. But, as a package and framed,
Right.
that's what was in there. It puts him on the list as being the seventh most expensive F1 trading card of all time, where Lewis tops it with a 2020 Topps Chrome F1 Superfractor #1, whatever that is, which went for 900,000, so almost a million. So there you go. That's where you judge where you are in F1 standings.
I actually would probably disagree with you. I think it's not the race worn suit cutout and signature. It's that it's included as part of it, but it's the rarity of the card, is my guess.
Yeah,
I mean, I
maybe.
collected trading cards when I was young. It's been a bit. I'm not young now. And I have some of them, as they call it, slabbed in my basement where they've been graded and put into a protective case. And I once had my cousin come over, and he's in Vegas now. He's in LA for a while, and he was here, and he freaked out because I have some Michael Jordan second year cards, and those are quite expensive, and they're in pretty good condition. They're not his rookie cards. I traded that away as a kid, and just for everyone's benefit, during COVID, a Michael Jordan rookie card sold for $250,000. I had that card as a kid, and I traded it for a Darryl Strawberry rookie card, now worth $5. So if you're looking for arbitrage advice, talk to anyone who's ever talked to me, but don't talk to me.
Oh man. Oh, what else did we have? Random story that's cropped
Yeah,
up. That's
I saw this happen too. This was a weirdo, right?
Yeah, it was like out of nowhere, all this stuff started flooding in that Jenson Button was going to be replacing Martin Brundle, and Jenson was the man. And it got so much sort of online momentum that basically both of them had to come out and dismiss it. Jenson came out and said, no, 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 I'm not positioned to replace Martin. He's the man when it comes to commentary. As much as I love jumping in when Martin is taking a break, I wouldn't want to do more as I've got enough going on. And then also Brundle came out and just, in classic Brundle, just responded of utter clickbait nonsense. So there we go. Or as the Dirty Side would like to call it, a nothing burger.
A nothing burger. The next story is just, I guess, a little fascinating. So Ocean's 11, one of my favorite.
Brilliant film.
Yeah, I was going to say one of my favorite movies. I like 12 and 13 as well, and 8. But I'll say that I enjoyed Ocean's 11 a lot. They're making a prequel to it. It'll be set in 1962, so long before Danny Ocean ever set foot in a casino or that the Bellagio was even made. 1962 Ocean's 11 prequel coming out. The backdrop, the 1962 Monaco Grand Prix. How cool is that? So they're going to be, at least for a portion of the movie, they're going to be in Monaco, whomever this is, however the characters are set up, I don't know. But I can't wait to see it. I love the fact that F1's getting more, attention. The F1 movie made $633 million worldwide, highest grossing racing movie of all time. And for anyone who's curious, the 62 Grand Prix was won by New Zealand's Bruce McLaren in a Cooper Climax car. And we'll talk a little bit later about this era of cars, McLaren and the Climax engines, which often arrive too early. And so we'll have that discussion a little later.
So this has has this got full circle? I might be misremembering this. Wasn't it Ocean's 12 that partnered with whichever racing team it was at the time to put a diamond on the nose cone in Monaco that year, and then the mystery of the missing diamond when it wasn't recovered, the car crashed and the diamond went missing?
And it was a
Do you
diamond.
remember that?
It was in Monaco. It was a diamond. I don't remember it being Ocean's
in
12.
I think I don't know. I could be completely misremembering that. Maybe we need to do some more research. But it's kind of like, oh, we got full circle there. Because I was going to say it almost feels like an Ocean 11's type plot to have some
It
big.
was Ocean's 12.
Oh, you just googled it, did you?
I did. How an F1 team lost a 300,000 diamond at the 2004 Monaco Grand Prix. It was Jaguar on
Jaguar.
their nose
Yes.
cone, right? That's right. With the George Clooney-led Ocean's 12 movie about to hit cinemas, a group of marketing executives from JAG and the film's production company Warner Brothers came up with an idea. What? I forgot that was an Ocean's movie that the publicity was
I don't know
Monaco
why I
for.
remember it being because it felt like the plot, the fact that the diamond went missing was almost. I think I remember talking about it. I thought with you a while back that
Yeah,
did the diamond really go missing, or is that just too perfect that it's almost like an Ocean's 12
I didn't
heist
know it
that
was
they were
Ocean's
able
12
to
they were
send a marshal
promoting.
out onto the track and take the diamond? It was really Mr. Ocean.
Yeah,
Anyway,
yeah. Or his buddy, Brad Pitt.
who then became a racing driver? Oh
Maybe
my
he was
gosh, this
driving
is
the car.
battle mode in the F1 movies by putting diamond encrusted pieces on the side of the. Where did you get that diamond, Brad? Anyway, we've completely gone
We've lost
down a
it.
bizarre rabbit hole.
I can't remember. I
Right.
forgot that was Ocean's 12, though. Great memory, man. Great memory.
Yeah, just couldn't remember the Formula One car it was on. Pieces and parts.
Oh, 04
Anyway,
Jag. I forgot that, too.
could we see Yuki coming back sooner than we think? We probably will start whipping up silly season when F1 finally returns to action. We'll be going towards the summer break, and I'm sure silly season rumours will be abound, and we will take part in them. But apparently, Haas were keen on taking Yuki, but Red Bull shut it down because they weren't quite sure what their 2026 lineup was going to be at that point. So rather than let him go to Haas, they kind of shut that option down. But apparently, um, Ocon is rumoured to be in a bit of bother at the moment. Komatsu has voiced his dissatisfaction with the French driver's recent performances. Ocon picked up for his first points in the Japanese Grand Prix, but has only made it into the top 10 five times in his last 16 races. And Behrman is being seen as the team's main driver now. So, where are you filing that under silly season nonsense?
I think there's something there because you and I have talked about it. There's two midfield drivers who are always right behind the top teams, and it's not bathing their teammates in a bunch of glory. Pierre Gasly, but Colapinto isn't viewed as a number one anymore, or number one
Yep.
possibility anymore. I meant, and then Behrman and Ocon was the number one in that team for some time, and they thought he would be, and he's not because Behrman's outshining Ocon. So could this be true? Could Komatsu want to have maybe a Japanese driver in that car as well? Haas, Toyota, Gazoo Racing. Could you see a Japanese driver back there? Yeah. And is he a good driver? Yes. So not just because of his nationality, but because the tie-ins all work really well, and he's a quality driver. So I'm not going to say it's a nothing burger yet, but it's too early to start putting it on the grill. The next news was exciting. Just happened actually late this week. Dorian Pon drove the Merc F1 car, became the first woman to drive a Mercedes F1 car. She drove the W12 at Silverstone for 76 laps. Now, you gotta think her neck was killing at the end of 76 laps because IndyCar drivers can't do 76 laps without their neck falling apart in an F1 car. So you would have to assume she's like every other normal human being who isn't an F1 driver already and gets out and oh, that hurts.
It was awesome to see the videos. Mercedes have been all over it on social media today as we record on a Saturday. It's just so good to see. It's like it's been too long. We've had a couple. Oh, who drove? There was for Aston Martin recently. I
Yes.
can't remember the name. Oh,
I can see her
her name
face.
escapes me. I can see her face as well. But then I think you're almost going back to who drove in the
Jessica.
Oh, Jessica, yes. But and this is the problem. The fact that we're struggling to remember is it doesn't happen often enough. And I think, I know Aston Martin are a big
Hawkins.
team, but I think a prominent team like Mercedes doing this, come on, let's just sort of show a pathway
Yeah.
for the ladies into F1 cars and show a graduation maybe from the academy into this. Like, I would love to be not 60 years old by the time the first woman drives in F1.
Me too.
It would be nice to happen within a decade.
Well, I think you and I agree, and I think that's why we get so geeked up for the Academy. And when we see it, I mean, I was cheering like crazy last year for a couple of drivers, as were you, and can't wait for it again this year in Montreal. So, speaking of Mercedes, an interesting statoid came across the Discord. Most wins for one team in F1 history, and we had not seen this, so I can't remember who brought this up. I'm gonna take a shot and say Lee because this feels like a Lee item, but if it's somebody else, I apologize in advance. Most wins for one F1 team.
One NFL.
NFL team. For most F1 team, Lewis Hamilton 84 wins at Mercedes, Schumacher 72 wins Ferrari, and of course, again they had wins out with other teams in other places. But third, knocking on the door behind Schumacher's Max Verstappen with 71 at Red Bull. Obviously, he has a lot of wins, and obviously a lot of them have been at Red Bull. Did he have a couple Toro Rosso wins, I think? Anyway,
Maybe.
regardless, he's one win behind Schumi for tying the most wins with one team, which is amazing. I just kind of snuck up on you when I saw this. And by the way, the delta is huge to the next person. It's Seb at 38. So you have three people who have really established themselves. When you think of a team and you think of wins, you think of Lewis and Mercedes, Schumacher and Ferrari, and Max and Red Bull. And that's for a reason.
Yeah. No, agree. Agree. Right, okay, just to close out the news. Last weekend,
I love this story.
oh, it was amazing. It was amazing. Me and my wife went up to Montreal. We had a fantastic weekend. We walked more than I've walked in my life, I think, around that city. I saw so much of the city that I've never seen as a F1 fan. And that includes the racetrack as well. So she was looking at things to do and she said, oh, yeah, she was using ChatGPT, 48 hours in Montreal. What should we do? We kind of got all this stuff that we were going to do. And it said, oh, you should go over to the island where the expo center is and where the Formula One track is because there's this castle slash turret tower there that you can go up. I was like, is there? And there's this other thing, and there's this hike. Is there? It's like all this stuff she was coming up with. That's all on the island. It's like all the stuff that we don't see because the fences tell us that we must walk this way and go towards the track. Plus the fact that we're too excited to want to do anything but go
Right.
to the track, right? So she said, "Oh yeah, while we're there, apparently the track's open all year round. We could just hire bikes and just cycle around the track." And I'm like, "Okay, you're trying to sell it to me that we need to cycle around the track? Yep, I'm in." So we went over there, and it was the most surreal experience of my life of going to Montreal because I've only ever really been with you to the races. I've been a couple of times to work. That doesn't count because you go to an office and you're out again. You don't see anything. The metro was empty. We walked up the stairs. Didn't have to push past anybody. It was dead. It was like tumbleweed going through this. And I'm like looking around staring. And she's like, what's going on? I went, I've never seen it this empty. This is weird. Came out of the metro doors. We go over and get our rental bikes. And there's a sign that says you can go this way to the tracks. I'm, okay. I mean, we normally go that way, the opposite way, all the way down. Like,
Down and around
through
and
the
up
thing,
and
down
on
and
a bridge
around, back
then
up, over the bridge. Yeah, blah, 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 blah. Takes about 3 hours to walk to the track.
It's not fast.
And it's like, this way to the track. I'm like, okay, I've never been this way before. So we get on our bikes, and within what felt like 200 yards of pedaling, we're at the hairpin. We go over this little bridge at the back end of the track, and there we are. I'm like, I didn't know that when we came out of the metro, we're there. The track is literally there, and we get to have to walk 3 hours to get to it. So off we went. We did a lap. We got overtaken by the people that turn up looking like Valtteri in their racing bikes and lycra and helmets that look like they come from Mars. But we overtook our share of walking people and running people. I mean, but it's so surreal to me that this is probably a lot of people's regular Sunday morning thing. Locals, you could see them. They turn up on the metro and they jog. They jog over to the hairpin. They do a couple of laps of the track. They go back on the metro and go home. Their Sunday morning jog is to jog round the F1 track. And I'm like, that is so cool. So anyway, we did our first lap. We stopped at many places, took pictures, put my bike on pole position, took a picture of that, took a picture of mine and Brian's seats, which were not there. Our only 2 rows or 3 rows of seating seemed to be missing, which included mine and Brian's. So
Hopefully they return the seats. Dear Montreal, if you're listening, we're assuming you're upgrading them to armrests.
yeah, they're putting thrones and yeah.
Correct. Armrests and cushions and a little refrigerator for sodas and beers and sodas. And
100% is definitely
beers.
what they're doing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I did a little drive by the Wall of Champions and kind of like slapped it just to show the disrespect I had for it to go, yeah, I'll show you. Almost fell off my bike when I did that. I was so glad I didn't because that would have been the ultimate irony.
Now,
So-
did you bury beer like I asked?
No beer burying was done. There was too much. So I'll get to that in a minute. So we did the lap, and I get to the end. And I'm like, okay, that was so cool, but my wife was pretty cold. It was sunny, but it was quite windy. But she's competitive. You know, she's a competitive swimmer. She has that gene inside her. And we get to the end of this lap, and she went, do you want to go again? Because she looked at her watch. She said, I think we did that lap in about 16 minutes. I reckon we could do a quicker one. I'm like, yeah, you don't need to ask me twice. So we set off. We clocked the fastest lap. We did 14 minutes on the second lap. And then that's when we came to leave. And you can see that F1's about to shut this island down. I was looking on the schedule, and it's only open for another week and a half before they close it. There was so much construction going on. They've already brought in what they can do what they're willing to do while the track's still open. So there were people everywhere, security, all this kind of stuff. We're all started setting stuff up. So my beer burying opportunities were not good. But it
Yeah.
was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. It like riding over the rumble strips on the curbs. They hurt on my bike, let alone what it must be when you're like doing 150 miles an hour over them. But it was just weird, Brian. It was weird seeing the track skinned down to just metal. So
Yeah.
there's no sponsorship on anything. There's no signage. There's no garages there for any like all the paddock is just like looks like a regular building. It's really weird, but I can't wait to be back there next month now. What we got? We've got basically almost 1 month this weekend.
Yeah. I think 5 weeks. Not too bad.
Yeah, not too bad. Anyway, should we open up the vault?
Let's do it. That sounded like fun, by the way. And I am a little
so
disappointed about the beer. We're going to let that slide.
I know, I'm sorry.
We could have saved a lot of money. All right. We wouldn't have to save money if our vault was filled with this much money, but it's filled with videos this week. Events that only happened once in F1 history on the Formula One channel, 9 minutes. I loved this. If you're into oddities and niche things, rando type things that occur, you'll enjoy this one. It's only 9 minutes. I'd say give it a run. How well does Martin Brundle know Martin Brundle? On the Sky Sports F1 channel, 12 and a half minutes. Natalie interviewed Martin. It was a lot of fun. And he had some great insights. He didn't just answer the questions, but he kind of talked about, his racing career and who he raced against and talked about battling Senna and other things. It was great. I really recommend that one. Hilarious challenge.
Quick one on that.
Yeah.
Just quick one. There's a lot of people, and especially this makes me sound old, but the newer generation that will only ever think of Brundle as that guy that does the pit lane walk and the announcer and interviews people and shoves microphones into people's faces. But I know he never got to the top echelons, but the fact, like you say, battling Senna, this guy was in a race car for many years, and I think a lot of people forget that. So
now, do I have this right? And you may not know either, and people can correct us on socials. I'm fairly certain he holds a record, which isn't one he wants. He's like run the most races without ever leading a lap or winning a race. Something.
Let's say yeah, definitely, Brian. Yep.
I don't. Maybe not leading. That doesn't make sense. Maybe it's something to that extent. He has one of those Hulkenberg, most times without a podium that he broke last year type records. So. Speaking of Nico, hilarious challenges with Hulkenberg and Bortoleto on the F1 Grid Games. On the F1 channel, F1 Grid Games. I love this. 8 minutes. First of all, I enjoy these. When you get the teammates things and there's competition, they've done them over the years, right? Soccer and upside down goggles and all kinds of different things. What's in the box, the blind box channel. They've done all these. So I'm happy it's back, that Grid Games is back. And I liked the way this one worked. So it was a ton of fun. Can't wait to see other teams participate throughout the season as they drop more Grid Games. Formula One was busy this week. Cheeky but legal F1 Overtakes on the Formula One channel, 17 minutes. This one gets kind of long, if I'm being honest. You can put this in your if I have extra time. I may have checked occasionally to see how much time was left in the video.
Not a good sign.
But I'll take it. There's no races. And then I got a couple left, and one of them's gold, but one of them's confusing. The Kaiser, official trailer, Gray Universe, 2 minutes. This is a movie about Michael Schumacher? Question. Was he called the Kaiser? Question. By whom? Question. The guy looked nothing like Schumi, maybe in the eyes when he put on his helmet and fire balaclava and he had all that on, but you saw his eyes. I'm like, a little bit, but otherwise, I didn't know they were going for Schumacher. I'm watching this thing like, what's happening? And so I did some research. It's only 2 minutes. This was created as and this is a quote, created as a proof of concept for a future feature film. The Kaiser blends real historical events with immersive storytelling, capturing the intensity, pressure, and humanity behind the helmet. So it's not even a full-length movie. It's apparently a short movie to prove that they should make the movie. I don't understand. Question. And have you ever heard, you're a Schumacher fan, bigger than I am. You ever heard him called the Kaiser?
No. The only thing that resonates with me is Kaiser Chiefs that were a band, but I don't think they were named to celebrate Schumacher.
I was unaware that was his nickname. I'm sure someone will say someone called him that one time, and we should have known that. I'd never heard of
Or
it.
it's the most famous nickname he's ever had, and we're completely ignorant. But
Yeah, exactly.
whatever.
Could be. So you think you know F1 drivers on the Formula One channel. 25 minutes. This was the end of last week. Came out like Sunday, but it was good. Again, with no races, I'll take it. But the one to watch, here it is before I close it out. F1 drivers race oldest to newest karts on the Quadrant channel. 21 minutes. This is where you spend your time. So Lando is obviously Quadrant. That's his brand that he's made, and he does all kinds of things through it, from YouTube to clothing to other things. But Carlos was there, and Carlando was back together. I don't understand how Williams said okay to this. They were in karts from each decade, and the 1950s kart looked dangerous. And they're out there tossing it around. Now, I know they're not going a million miles an hour, and they got their helmet and suit on. But it's still, like, if that's my guy, if I'm a Carlos fan, I'm like, no, don't risk it. And these karts, just wait for the races, man. And twice, sort of twice, and you'll see what I mean if you watch, they race the same kart. So it's interesting to see how they race against each other. Like, as they timed the 50s kart, I won't tell you who won. And then they ran a modern kart. They both have their own karts. Carlos Sainz 55 and the Quadrant Lando Norris 4, and they raced those, and I won't tell you who won that either. They're effectively, I think, the same kart, but they raced their own version, so it wasn't the same vehicle. But anyway, it was fun. I recommend that one. I had a great time, and it reminded me of Carlando. Rob, you cool if I close the vault?
Close it up. Although I do have a little Carlos Sainz 55 story to tack onto the end of this.
Yeah.
I've been getting those Hot Wheels F1 premiums, and
Yes.
it seems like there was a boatload of McLarens made, and that's all that's in stock everywhere. If I go to Walmart, Target, everywhere, that's all I come across. And every time I got excited the other week because I found a Haas. My son phoned me from Chicago the other day up near you. He was in a Walmart and he's got a George Russell 63 that he found. So that was like a loaner. I was just Googling it to see which ones were on there. And all the places that I did not expect to have toy cars on sale, my local Ace Hardware had got a Carlos Sainz 55 Williams. I'm like, $8. I'm having that. I ordered it.
$8?
Told me it was ready for pick. Yep. It was ordered. It was ready for pickup. I go in there yesterday. I drive in. I go in for my order. He comes up and he puts a Oscar Piastri 81 McLaren down in front of me. I'm like, no. And I show him the picture on the order. He's like, yeah, okay, yeah, that's not the right car, is it? Like, no, it's really not. So he goes into it. He finally comes back. Small print that wasn't even on the website. Well, it probably was, and I just didn't see it. The smallest of small print, assorted colours. They didn't even really know what they had. They didn't even know it was Formula One, really. It was just assorted colours. Well, you got a blue. I know you wanted a blue one, but this is an orange one. I'm like, that's not how this works. Cancelled that order. Walked out of there with nothing.
First of all,
another Oscar Piastri, but
yeah, why does Ace Hardware have these Hot Wheels Matchbox
I thought
cars?
I found this little kind of secret stash of like, because you can't find those 2025 ones. Just they seem quite rare, and you don't seem to be able to find them unless you want McLaren. Then there's like a million of them everywhere. But...
Even I have the McLaren, which I'm holding here for the YouTubes, but I couldn't find the premium. So mine is just the regular. I found it at as we would say in Chicago, and tell your son this is how it works, the Jewels. It's not Jewel Osco, it's the Jewels. And so that's what you call the grocery store chain here. And they have a bin of Matchbox cars. And do I go through that thing? Like, I basically jump in. And I'm in there like dumpster diving through the whole thing looking for cool stuff in the Matchbox car section.
I do that in my local Stop and Shop, and my wife just walks away with disgust on her face every time I'm looking
Exactly.
at the
And then like kids walk up and they see a grown man doing this and like, what you find
I got
anything
no
good?
shame. I don't care. Yeah. Right. Let's walk on over to Cadillac Corner and stand there for a while.
Well, hold on.
Oh no, what a disaster. Oh, Brian!
It's Cadillac Corner.
We tripped on the curb.
It's Cadillac Corner.
I tripped on the curb. It was a super Curba Grande.
Yeah. So we were sat in Cadillac gutter before we could stand up and get over to the corner. Right, okay, just a quick one. Cadillac dropped the news this week that Colton Herta will take part in 4 FP1 sessions this year, and they've announced that the Spanish Grand Prix in Barcelona in June will be his first one, and then they will name the three ones later. And then you went a little bit more and found a little sack snap to go alongside
I
this.
did, and I have something that's not even on here that I want to highlight. It's a
Ooh.
historic moment and historic moment. Whoever F1 stats guru is, you got to get your language right. For American motorsport, 40 years in the making. On June 26th, Colton Herta will drive a Cadillac F1 car in the official session at Barcelona, as Rob said. The last time an American drove an American F1 car in an official session was Eddie Cheever, who made a stand-in appearance for the Haas Lola team in June of 1986. Wow. Also, Colton Herta, for Disney people out there, I think he looks like Flynn Rider. If you don't know who that is, Google it.
Oh, he
It's
okay. He does, and this is going to show how much I've watched it too much because it was one of my daughter's favorite films when she was little. He looks like one of the artwork posters that they don't quite get right when all the wanted posters.
boom. You're right. I'm with you. But he definitely has a Flynn Rider thing going. We should tell him that when we see him.
Oh, of course, yeah. Sure, would be thrilled.
If we walked up, we go, "Excuse me, can I have your autograph, Mr. Ryder, Flynn Rider?"
Yeah,
Like,
I'm sure he gets it all the time.
punch us in the
Um,
face.
yeah. Have you got the fire to crank up for the Fireside Vale's Tales, or is that too far at the back of your sound cabinet and you won't be able to find it?
Uh,
Oh, oh,
I don't have
oh,
it.
oh, Brian! Not only did you mess up Cadillac Corner, but now you don't have the Vale's Tales. Oh, you do.
I had moved it for this year. I had forgotten I had it, so it's on a different page. Fix that. So this is a special Vale's Tales. We're going to talk about Jochen Rindt, the only F1 driver who never lived to see himself win the title. And it is a world champion tragic story that I look forward to talking about. And I'm done with the fire because now I have to pee. And I look forward to talking about it. It is incredibly sad. And as I went through this over the last couple weeks, watching videos, reading articles, like there's so much I didn't know. And as you mentioned, when we did, you sent me that trivia, name all the F1 champions. And I got Rindt because I remember about when he won, and Seb Vettel did the thing where he went backwards and got them all, and I remember his pride with talking about and remembering Rindt as he went through. And so I didn't know much about him other than the title I just said, the only F1 world champion who never lived to see himself win the title. And learning more about it is a great reminder, a stark, sad, startling reminder of how dangerous this sport used to be. And we've talked about this with Jim Clark, who died in a car, with Ascari, who died in the car. We've done Vale's Tales on these folks. So it is just a really tragic conversation that I learned a ton researching, and I'm looking forward to talking about.
Yeah, I agree. I was looking through these things like when we start going over his early life and we'll get to an accident that he had, I was like looking at the parallels. Remember when we talked about Mansell and like Mansell was almost like checked himself out of hospital. They said, "Oh, you could never race again." He's like, "Right, I'm out of here. Off I'm going. I don't care about like, whatever it was, broken back or something. I'll show you guys." But yeah, so what, I mean, you did this. Why don't you ease us in and then we can kind of talk about the tale of Rindt.
Yep. He's a driver who once said that joining Lotus meant to either be world champion or die trying. And that is true. We'll get into that. He had a ton of relationships throughout the sport. He was born in 42 in Germany, raised in Austria. He didn't start karting at a young age. He didn't have a family that was into motor racing or anything like that. He had kind of an inauspicious and late start to his racing career. He was described as a bit of a hellraiser by his friends from school, and we'll get into who one of those people are in a second. He had a moped, and he'd race people with it. He was kicked out of schools. He loved skiing, but he always took things to the max. And he had massive crashes while skiing. One time he broke something in his neck, which required multiple surgeries across his body. And he ended up, as a youth, after the skiing accident, had one leg that was 4 centimeters, about an inch and a half, shorter than the other. So he limped for the rest of his life, but he kept skiing. He's like, yeah, I like
know.
skiing. I'm not done.
I think slight little factual correction there. I think it's his femoral neck, which is the neck of his femur, not his neck.
Oh, thank you. His leg makes more
That's why
sense.
he had all those surgeries on his leg, and they ended up shortening it by 4 centimeters,
Thank you.
over 1.5 inches. I mean, that's crazy. It's
That's
like
crazy. That
if
and
I
then
if I if I was I don't like skiing anyway, but if I was a skier and I did that much damage to myself that I now limped forever, my first thing wouldn't be right. When am I going back on the slopes again? Maybe I'll go and break the other leg so badly they can shave 4 centimeters off that side.
and so then he has his leg in a cast and he's driving around without a license, which he hadn't gotten yet. Driving around like a hellraiser with his leg in a cast, and he got caught. He had 8 misdemeanors as a youth, at least. So it took him a while to even get his license. But eventually he did get his license. He had two legs that worked, one a little shorter than the other, after his femur issue. Thank you, Rob. And his interest in motorsports kind of came from a buddy. And he obviously enjoyed adrenaline, so he was into things that really kind of got your heart pumping. But he went to the 1961 German Grand Prix at the Nürburgring with some school friends, including none other than Helmut Marko. So for people who are brand new to motorsport and may not see Dr. Helmut Marko in the pit lane anymore, in the paddock, he has been an advisor to Red Bull forever. He's basically created that Red Bull team and all of the driver lineups for Red Bull and Racing Bulls. He was a Formula One driver himself, Helmut Marko, but he was school friends with Jochen Rindt. And he said, hey, let's go check out the German Grand Prix. And Jochen's like, all right. So first of all, it's bananarama to me to realize he was buddies with Helmut Marko as kids.
Yeah, yeah.
And we've been watching Helmut forever in the paddock. And like you would assume that, you kind of like Charles and Max, where they raced together when they were young. And, you had things like this.
Just an incident.
Those types of, this Charles talking about bumping into Max when they're like, 8 or something. It's just, it's mind-blowing to think about all of these connections that people have. And it's natural. And they grow up in areas and they race and they're into cars. But his buddy Helmut took him to a race. And Rindt is like, you know what? This is for me. This is where I want to spend some time.
Yeah, and I was going to jump in now and sort of talk about then how he got his first way into his first race, but then I looked at where it was and I wanted you to pronounce it instead. So
his first race was at the Flugplatzrennen in 1961.
Nice.
Now, the rumor is it was his grandma's Simca. I won't try to pronounce the model. Now, I have seen pictures of it, and it was tarted up pretty good in racing gear. So I'm not sure it was actually his grandma's car. I'm going to put a little rumor mill chopper on that one and say maybe he just had a Simca and he raced it. Maybe he took her car, but it was no longer like she was going to a grocery shop with this car because it was now had like numbers on the side and it looked like a roll cage possibly. So I'm like, Grandma ain't driving that Simca anymore. When I saw the videos, pictures of it. And you want to talk about his first race? I'll let you do that since I did the Flugplatzrennen.
Yeah, he was obviously still completely raw and was just bringing his same moped driving skills to the track because it was essentially black flagged almost immediately in his first race for his dangerous driving style. But he didn't understand any of the regulations, so had no idea why people were waving this black flag at him or what it meant. So he just kept going. Just kept driving, just had no clue what was going on, and was many, many stories when I was looking into this of just really dangerous. When they talk about the black flagging, it's kind of like going out wide on the other side of some of the straw barriers that they had, and almost like running into spectators and just basically just doing what he wanted and ignoring any type of rule whatsoever.
Yeah, exactly. And so during this time, 61 to 62, Rindt was running the Simca in these races. He then got an Alfa Romeo and convinced the local dealership to give him free servicing. He raced that. Through 61 and 62, he was trying to figure things out, and he was kind of learning how to race. And let's go back in time and remember when this was. This is the Jim Clark era, right? Clark was huge in 63 to 65, where he was unstoppable, but he was on his rise. So this is in that kind of time frame of, the cars looked like the F1 cars looked like bathtubs, and they were becoming more and more powerful, but we were losing drivers at a crazy clip as well. So even at the junior categories, you had to really be committed, and you had to really be into this. And so I think you might ask, why, Brian, were you even mentioning this could have been his grandmother's car? Who cares? What's the point? Well, the point is Jochen was born in to an Austrian mom and a German father, and they lived in Hamburg. And his parents were killed in a bombing raid in the Second World War when he was 15 months old. And then he was raised by his grandparents in Austria. It's like hard to believe we're talking about a Formula One world champion whose parents died in World War II bombing raids, and he still found a way through the raising and love from his grandparents to stabilize his life from that and move on. And then he was obviously, as we've talked about, a bit of a hellraiser as a youth. But it was not the easiest of starts. This was not I'm a billionaire, my dad's a billionaire, and I drive the car because I've always had the opportunity. This was I'm dodging bombs. My parents died. My grandparents raised me. I broke my leg, and it's shorter than the other. I race people on mopeds. I'm kicked out of schools. I got all these violations. I'm driving around in a cast with no license. And oh, by the way, I kind of like motor racing because one of the most famous sort of team principal leaders ever was my buddy as a school kid. What?
I don't think he knew that. He wouldn't have known that last part just yet. But I loved all the build up there, and I think it's also fair to say that's why, despite that he was born in Germany, he's always raced under the Austrian flags. I think he basically considered himself Austrian. His grandparents raised him in Austria, and so then he kind of got all these bits and pieces. I guess he eventually learned how, because he had those wins in that Alfa, he kind of figured out how to abide by the rules of the road and how to race. And in '63, he with a sponsor from wealthy, successful Austrian driver Kurt Bardi-Barry, he raced that season and became notorious again for, was it now, bringing his skills to the forefront and winning things? No, it was more dangerous driving again. Again, on street tracks, he almost took spectators out and didn't slow down for ambulances. And this, again, carried on with his straw barrier bypassing. I mean, so you've got to kind of rein this in a little bit, Jochen. You're not going to go anywhere with this just sort of Dukes of Hazarding off the side of the track.
Exactly. You're totally right. And then it was 64. That was 63, as you mentioned. And 64 is really when things took off for Jochen. The friendship, sponsorship from the gentleman you mentioned, Kurt Bardi-Barry. He, in partnership in 64 with Barry, he drove some Brabham cars in Formula 2. And this is a time where you could run Formula 2 and Formula 1 at the same time. You could run in both series, which, again, kind of defeats some of the purpose of Formula 2, but that's not really what it was for at the time. And so in 64, he started in F2. And like I said, he drove some Brabham cars over his entire F2 career, which was going to run effectively till his death. He had 29 victories in F2, which is amazing. But 64, and the beginning of his F2 career, after the success in Formula Juniors, that saw him get an opportunity into an F1 car. But one thing I want to highlight, and you love this. So like when I saw this, I thought of you. In 64, before he even got this F1 start, which I'll mention in a second, or Rob will mention in a second, he got into sports cars, and he ran the 24 Hours of Le Mans. He didn't actually get into the car because it died before his shift came up. Like the car was kaput before he could go. But he kept going to Le Mans. And in 65, I'm getting a little ahead here, but in 65 he finished third. Otherwise, he always had DNFs. But he ran all kinds of series, and we'll get into more of that later. He's doing F1, he's doing F2, he's doing Le Mans, he's doing all kinds of other series we'll talk about. You love that. Like, could you imagine? Like, it's a big deal when Max is running at the Nürburgring and people are freaking out for one race. Could you imagine if they were running every driver's doing multiple races in between F1 races? That's what they did.
Well, you can see, I mean, if you already mentioned it, I don't know this for sure, but inspired by watching Jim Clark?
Maybe.
Question? I mean, Jim Clark was racing everything known to man. If it was a lawnmower, if it was a truck, if it was a tractor, it's like Jim Clark would race it and also race it faster than everybody else. So, you got this young guy that's making his way into the sport that is like probably seeing that happen and go, yeah, that's the way to go. So yeah, in 64, he got he had a Formula One debut, his home race, the Austrian Grand Prix. And I love this, in a loaned Brabham BT11. So it's like, turned up and went, anyone got a car I could borrow? He retired on the 58th lap with a broken steering column in his only Grand Prix of the season. And I mentioned that because broken bits on cars are going to become a running theme from now all the way through, unfortunately, to his death. But his relationship with cars that just seem to keep falling apart around him is a kind of an ongoing theme. And in '65, he signed as a permanent driver with Cooper, paired with some driver people might have heard of, a guy called Bruce McLaren.
Who
I
may
think
have
he
won the
went on to do
62
something.
Monaco Grand Prix and he has the $300,000 diamond hidden somewhere from the '04 Jag?
Oh, yeah, true. Now, I think you wrote a joke in here as I was reading through it, unless my mind is in the gutter.
I
So
did.
Cooper, okay, Cooper were struggling at the time. They'd been a former top team, but they had issues with their climax engine. It was often over too soon, wrote Brian.
What? The engine would crap out and they wouldn't finish the race.
Yeah,
The race is over
yeah.
too soon.
Yeah, let's move on. During this time at Cooper, he became friends with someone else that people might have heard of, some guy called Bernie Eccleston.
Crazy.
He kind of noticed his commercial talent and just went over to him and was like, "Yeah, what? Can you just basically do all my financial stuff? I'm not going to hire you as my manager. I'm not going to actually pay you, but we seem to be good friends. So do you just want to do all this stuff for me?" And Eccleston said later of the relationship, "I was never his manager. We were just good friends, and I helped him out whenever I could, whenever he needed." So he basically got Bernie Eccleston as his full-time financial manager for nothing. But again, just like you say, like these names that we know now all seem to have crossed paths
Yes.
with Jochen. You've got Helmut Marko, you've got Bernie Eccleston,
And
it's
friends,
Bruce
like-
McLaren, and
Friends, like people,
Yeah.
these aren't like I raced with them. He was friends with Bernie till his death, and we'll talk a little bit about his legacy after that. But yeah, you nailed it. So like that Cooper with the Climax engine, not good. In '66, Cooper introduced a new chassis and used a 9-year-old Maserati V12, which were powerful but heavy. However, at the same time, a new engine formula was introduced for the season, and the capacity doubled to 3 liters, and a lot of teams struggled with the new rules, leaving the Cooper car with their big old engine a little more competitive than they assumed they'd be. He had 3 podiums that season, which put him actually third in the championship at the end of the year. So a young guy who had not had a long history of racing, but is having success, learning the rules now, kind of getting things a little more under control. 2 years in these Coopers, finished third in the championship, and people are saying, you know what, we may have a driver here who's on to something. And in his third season at Cooper in '67, it was less successful. Rindt only finished 2 races. Finished. So, like, again, as Rob said, cars breaking. We're going to talk about reliability a lot throughout this and the way cars are put together. He only finished 2 races, the Belgian and Italian Grand Prix, both in 4th place, but he still finished 13th in the championship. He did, however, get married that year to Nina Lincoln, model and daughter of Finnish racing driver Kurt Lincoln, who I've not heard of before. But she knew what she was marrying into, racing drivers and the sort of the paddock approach. And they got married in '67. And I want to kind of put a pin in the way that F1 drivers and families worked and lived together and spent time together. We'll get into that sort of at the end. We'll talk about some of his relationships in the paddock. But it was interesting that he became friends with other people, and at this point he starts becoming friends with Jackie Stewart and others. So we'll talk more about that as we go. Just again, the names of F1 luminaries that he was buddies with. It was almost like a network effect, network diagram, and Jochen's in the middle, and all of these people from Marko and Eccleston and Stewart and McLaren, and we'll talk more about others, but just amazing.
So we kind of get to around 1968, which, what did we say, he was born 42? So he's a 26-year-old man at this point, which in F1 terms was really super young. It's not now. It's interesting to see how the sport has changed. Like back then, like drivers getting into the sport were like in their 30s. It was Fangio raced until he was, when did he was ridiculous.
Until he was kidnapped at like 54 or something.
Yes. So he's almost this nearly man at the moment. He's getting offers from every team on the grid to come join them, apart from Lotus and Honda, which are probably the ones that he wanted to go to. So then he ends up moving to Brabham because they'd been the world champions in the previous 2 seasons. So it's like, okay, I'm kind of gonna go there. But again, Technical problems beset him. The Brabham's Repco V8 engine was just not competitive. Everyone else was using a Cosworth, and Rindt finished just 2 races. 2 again, whole season. He just finishes 2, but both in 3rd place. So, but as Brian mentioned earlier, it's like, well, okay, he just finished 2 races. Doesn't sound like he was doing much that year. But he was also racing Indy F2. So again, he's keeping this kind of racing anything just to keep those skills going. It's eventually going to pay dividends for him, but right now he's that kind of nearly man in F1 where he's not getting the seat in the car, or if he is getting the offer from a team like Brabham, it's after they've just peaked and now they're on their downward spiral. So he's always in a car that's almost there, and it's obviously good enough to finish in 3rd place, but it's also going to break down, and he's only going to finish 2 races. Now, 68, they have their one and only child, Natasha. And I'm kind of thinking, like, same way we saw Max have a kid, is it going to be now this where he starts kind of not wanting to take as much risk in the cars? And this is just kind of, I think, I'll touch on it again later when we talk about his legacy and safety. But for me, this is where that kind of era and the risks kind of and the need to compete probably outweigh everything else. So 1969, he signs for Lotus, where he joins Graham Hill. And it's said that he felt uncomfortable with the move because of the notorious unreliability of the car. The team was involved in 31 accidents. Hill had had 9 crashes, and had made a joke saying, "Every time I'm being overtaken by my own wheel, I know I'm in a Lotus."
Graham Hill, funnier than I knew. That is great. I don't love when that happens because it's dangerous. But for example, at the first IndyCar race this season in St. Pete, here in 2026, I can't remember which driver it was, but someone got overtaken by their own wheel. They came out of the pits, it wasn't fastened, they ran a couple laps, they start slowing down, and their wheel goes rolling past them. I'm like, oh, that's not how it's supposed to work.
So Eccleston had advised him that a better deal could be at Brabham, but the speed of the Lotus was kind of just the shiny object to Rindt, and this is where Brian came up with that quote right at the beginning when he introduced it. Rindt said, "I'm going to Lotus because at Lotus I can either be world champion or die."
Yeah. Bernie said to him, if you want to live, join Brabham. If you want to win, join Lotus. And to your point, that's what these drivers did. They wanted to win. I think you still see that, but at that point it was a relentless focus on winning because you had to risk everything to have a chance. And so in that 69 season, he was hesitant to sign because both he and Hill, once the season started, had high-speed crashes at the Spanish Grand Prix. In both instances of their crash at the same race, the suspension-mounted wings on the cars broke off, causing accidents that really could have probably killed either of them. The effect of the failure lifted Rindt's car off the track and into the barriers, where it collided with the stationary car of Hill, who'd already had the accident at the same spot. So, although Rindt only suffered a broken nose, which is a lot, a marshal lost an eye, another had his foot broken, Rindt was furious with the Lotus team boss, Colin Chapman. We always talk about Colin Chapman and his ability to build cars and his innovative approach to things. He told a reporter after the accident, "I placed the blame on him, Chapman, and rightfully so, because he should have calculated that the wing would break." The next day, he said on Austrian TV, "The wings are insanity. In my eyes, they should not be allowed on racing cars, but to get any wisdom into Colin Chapman's head is impossible." This is his team boss. And so yeah, go ahead.
Did I read? I mean, he crashed into Graham Hill's car in the same spot that Graham Hill's car had crashed earlier on in the race. Is that how I read that bit right?
Yes.
So, like, same spot, same thing has failed on both the same Lotuses, and he's ended up crashing into the stationary car of Hill that has failed a couple of laps prior.
Yes.
It's nuts. An entire F1 lap, and both cars both go out at the same place. B, with exactly the same mechanical failure. C, smash into each other.
And marshals are hurt in this whole process.
Yeah.
Badly.
Yep.
To this point, one thing I hadn't mentioned to this point, Rindt had 3 podiums in the Cooper when they put that big Maserati engine in 66, but no wins. In his year at Brabham, he'd had 2 podiums. Rob mentioned it. He only finished, I think, 2 races, but they were both third, so he had a couple podiums there. Now in 69, after these accidents and his clear disdain and lack of trust for Colin Chapman's cars. So the conversation he had about, the risk of driving a Lotus versus a more well-built car that may be slower in the Brabham. He finally gets his first win, a maiden Grand Prix win at the second to last race of the season at Watkins Glen. He won $50,000, which was the largest monetary prize in F1 at the time. But again, it was overshadowed by a serious accident involving Graham Hill, who crashed after a high-speed puncture and had major leg injuries. So in 69, we see Jochen Rindt. He ends up having this win that we just described. He had, I think, 3 podiums. Yep, that's correct, 3 podiums on the season. He ends up finishing 4th in the championship, and you're seeing the progression in a fragile but fast car. My favorite part of this, though, that I've been kind of waiting for, is in 69, he also ran in the Tasman series. And we learned about this in the Vale's Tales from Jim Clark, because Clark ran in the Tasman series as well. It's in New Zealand and Australia. This is 1969. It's not like you're getting on a A380 in first class and waking up 14 hours later and you're there and you've been sleeping and you've gotten pillows and a special duvet on your seat. No. You're taking like 9 planes that have propellers on some of them. And
this is like, do you ever see the old Indiana Jones films whenever he was flying anywhere?
Yes.
It would go to that brown map and it would show the plotting of all the different planes going across. He was Indiana Jones in his way to Australia.
And he finished 2nd in this series, which is amazing. So, again, we've talked about Indy, we've talked about Le Mans, we've talked about the fact he's doing F2 and F1, and he still have found time to do these other things. So, Jochen Rindt was a racer. And he, like Clark and like so many others, he'd race anything, as Rob said. But 70 is his championship season and probably the reason why we know him best.
Yeah, and it starts off with a great little statoid here of they were swapping out the Lotus 49 with the Lotus 72, but it wasn't quite ready. So Rindt was like, "Well, I'll just drive last year's car then."
Yeah.
Can you imagine that happening this year? Yeah,
And-
not really. I don't. Can I get the RB19 back, please? I don't want to drive this one.
Exactly. And so he actually won Monaco in the Lotus 49 in the old last season's car. The 72 was still not quite ready. Like you said, they had it and it was fragile and it was falling apart and they didn't have enough parts. And apparently the Excel sheet that they borrowed from Williams wasn't working right. And so then he in the beginning of the season, he was running the 49. They tried to get the 72 in. He's like, I'd rather run the 49. And then they eventually, after team orders, put him into the 72 in Netherlands. And that was the 5th race of the season. So he did not get any points in the first 2 races. He won Monaco, and we'll talk about one of the reasons he actually did win. He won Monaco the 3rd race of the season, no points in Belgium. And then the 5th race of the season, Netherlands, they put him in the 72. It was ready now, and Colin Chapman said, "You're driving this."
Yep, and he went on and took a win straight away in that car. Maiden victory of the Lotus 72, but it wasn't unfortunately something to be that celebrated, the maiden win, because on lap 23, his close friend Pierre Courage, who he'd just eaten dinner the night before, died in a fiery crash. And I don't know why. I think we might have covered that before. I don't know why. But yeah, just slams home that the era of F1 that we're talking about here is one where, unfortunately, people went racing and didn't come home.
Mm-hmm.
We're in a fortuitous place at the moment where the safety of the sport is so much better that we haven't had to talk about anything like this for a very long time.
Agreed.
But back then, like Brian said earlier, it was happening probably at a rate of at least every season.
I would say many drivers a season at times, but definitely losing someone every season. It was horrible. The next race is France. So he did win, as we said, in the Dutch Grand Prix. That's the 5th race of the season. 6th race in France, he wins again. However, he had steering failure on the car during the race. He was furious over these mechanical problems, stormed into the Lotus garage, and yelled at Colin Chapman, "If this happens again and I survive, I will kill all of you." He's right. He does not like the 72. He doesn't trust it. It's fast. He had a great pole lap at the race you described, the Dutch Grand Prix. He had a massive lead in the pole position. It's a fast car, but it is not reliable, and it's dangerous, the unreliability of it. But he was able to win, like I said, and he took the lead in the championship. So at this point, he's had 3 wins. He won Monaco, he won the Netherlands, and he won France. They go to the British Grand Prix next, and Jackie Ickx, who was challenging him for the championship, established an early lead ahead of Brabham and Rindt. when Ick's transmission failed. So Rindt passes Brabham for the lead. Brabham took the lead on lap 69 when Rindt had his own issues, and it looked like Brabham would win. However, Brabham ran out of fuel, just like he did in Monaco. So I referenced that. That's the reason Rindt won Monaco in that old 49, was Brabham ran out of gas on the last lap. Brabham ran out of gas again. Rindt won, but now it's 3 on the trot, 4 on the season, and he's solidifying his lead in the 1970 F1 season. After this, we end up going. There's a German Grand Prix where he ends up winning that as well, and then we continue on to Austria and then to Italy, round 10 of the championship, and we go to Monza.
Yeah, and this is where they ran with higher gear ratios to take advantage of the reduced drag. They increased the car's potential top speed from to 205 miles per hour. So they're really kind of turning this thing into an absolute rocket ship around Monza, Temple of Speed.
1970, these things still kind of look like bathtubs. I know it's a little further along in terms of the aerodynamics, but it's still a 1970s car that's going 205 around Monza. What?
Yeah, I know. And I'll let you you pulled together the Vale's tales, so
Sure.
I'll let you take us through kind of, unfortunately, what unfolds next.
So September 5th, 1970 practice, on the 5th lap of the practice session, he's heading out towards Parabolica, and Denny Hulme, who was ahead of Rindt prior, was following him at this point of practice. And his quote is, Jochen was following me for several laps, slowly catching up, and I didn't want to go through the second Lesmo corner very quick, so I pulled to one side and let Jochen pass me. And I followed him down into Parabolico. We were going real fast, and he waited until about the 200-meter sign to put on the brakes. The car just sort of went to the right and then yanked quickly to the left and turned out to the right again, and suddenly just went very quickly left into the guardrail. There is video of this crash. I watched it. It is violent in terms of the amount of left and right, quick right, but then very hard left to the barriers and the guardrail. Upon impact, a joint in the crash barrier parted. The suspension of the vehicle went under the barrier, and the car hit a stanchion head-on. The front end was destroyed, and this next part I did some extra research on. Rindt was in the habit of using only 4 points on the 5-point harness because you did not wear the crotch straps. And actually in the videos that Rob and I watched and other things, it was pretty common because what would happen is cars would catch fire. And the fastest way out was to not have the crotch strap, the bottom fifth of the 5-point harness, attached. So the other 4 held you in nicely, but you could quickly get the buttons on those and get out if your car caught fire. So people were prioritizing the challenges they knew they'd face, and fire was one of the big ones. And so, unfortunately, he didn't have that 5th belt buckled, and it was pretty common. Well, he wasn't the only person who did this. But unfortunately, as a result of that, he slid under the belts because there was nothing at the bottom of the 5-point harness holding him. And the seat belt itself fatally slit his throat.
It's the buckle of the 4-point as he goes under it, basically.
Yes.
Just cuts his own throat open, which is...
Later investigations found that the accident was initiated by a failure of the car's right front inboard brake shaft, but that Rindt's death was caused by poorly installed crash barriers. So the crash barriers didn't work. He didn't use the 5th part of the harness, which may have helped him. We don't know. It definitely wouldn't have been the cause of his death, but he still may not have survived. But in the brake situation, Colin Chapman rejected the assertion that the broken brake shaft had caused the accident, arguing that it broke when it hit the crash barrier. Okay, so what actually happened? And he was pronounced dead on the way to the hospital. Lotus withdrew the cars from the race, and the Grand Prix went ahead. Clay Regazzoni took his maiden victory. Obviously, celebrations were muted. The last part I'll say here before I let you jump in is there was a lengthy investigation into his death in Italy. There was a trial against Colin Chapman. It lasted 6 years. He was eventually cleared of the charges in 1976. But
we heard similar things for the whole Senna.
Yes.
Post Senna's, there was a really long investigation into that.
Correct.
So, yeah, I mean, the bit I wanted to add in here was it's one of the videos that you found that I was watching was that one of the things that really stoked a lot of anger about this from people that were there was people say, oh yeah, he was loaded into an ambulance and taken to the medical center. And the talking head video that you linked was like, it wasn't an ambulance, it was a flatbed truck with a poster on the side that said ambulance. I mean, it had no equipment in it. There were no
Right.
doctors on board.
Right.
It's just a van, just a van for just moving people around. The medical center, again, isn't a medical center. There were no
Nope.
doctors there. There's no equipment. There was no nothing. And they're just saying that he just basically lay there under a tarp, bleeding out. Um, and there is dispute as to whether he was actually already dead before he was on his way to the hospital in Milan. It just shines a light, which we'll come back to later, and not just the safety of the actual sport itself, the cars, the barriers, and all that kind of shenanigans, but then also the actual infrastructure around the sport,
Right.
like having token gesture ambulances that are really just a flatbed truck. It's just. It's just sad because there is a school of thought that had there been the right medical team on the scene, that he actually could have been saved. That it wasn't that like a died on impact type thing. So yeah, just not very nice. So
No.
just that whole just yeah. I will put the link of the videos in there and the ones we watched, but just listen to the guys talk about this and just sort of say that it just didn't need to happen.
Right.
It's but then we'll talk about it in the legacy as to how kind of things are a little kind of up.
And he was working on this. So we'll talk more about the safety. The last note on 70 is at the time he died, as I've already mentioned, he'd won 5 of that year's races so far. The Italian Grand Prix was the 10th. So he had a substantial lead in the Drivers' Championship. Jackie Ickx was the only person who could really take it from him. He won in Canada, Jackie Ickx did. And he would have needed to have won the next couple races, the last 2 races in the USA and Mexico. But in the USA, a race won by Rindt's replacement at Lotus, Emerson Fittipaldi. Ever heard of him? Emerson Fittipaldi won that race. Ickx only finished 4th. And so he no longer could win the championship, even by winning Mexico, which he did. And he ended up, Rindt had 45 points on the season, Ickx second with 40. And so at the closure of the U.S. Grand Prix, we knew that Jochen Rindt was the F1 world champion, and he wasn't here anymore. So they had one more race, and his widow will collect the trophy, and we'll talk about that in a second. But it was, I mean, I can't put into words how crazy it is to think about something like that happening today. Could you imagine if a current, and I won't even name one because it's so in such poor taste, but could you imagine if a current driver were leading the championship died and then held on to win? I mean, it would make me sick. And to your point on the way the conditions were at the track, the ambulances, the medical, it was high time to fix it by 1970. They had 20 years of running the F1 championship. And one of the things that Jochen was known for, while he was a crazy driver off the track and a wild man as a youth, he was super close with Jackie Stewart. I referenced that earlier. And they worked together to try to make F1 safer for all drivers. Last thing I'll say about Stewart and Robin, I'll let you kind of jump in about the safety part, but he would go to races and Jochen with his wife Nina. And they had their daughter at this point, I think Natasha, if I remember the name from earlier, right? And a lot of the families hung out, like the Stewarts, Helen Stewart, who I had the chance to meet, and Sir Jackie in the paddock. They hung out. I didn't know any of this, but like they were tight with the Rindts, and the two of them, they did things together. There were other families who participated, very close as couples. And even to this day, when they interviewed Nina not long ago, a few years ago in one of the videos, they talked about the closeness with the Stewart family and others. And like, I think that's unbelievably cool, but horribly sad to think about the fact that they would send their husbands out, their fathers, their dads, into these disastrous conditions to go run a race, and some of them didn't come back.
Yeah, no, agree. And I mean, and that's where, so like you say, Jackie Stewart and Rindt have been working together on trying to get safety measures higher, which I said a bit earlier on, is like weird. They've got principles that are almost at odds with each other, because they're on one hand accepting that I'm going to go and join this car because it's faster, but it's probably much more likely to kill me. So they'll step into it knowing the risks, but at the same time knowing that it shouldn't be that way and they should be striving to make a difference. So after Jochen's death, Jackie Stewart just sort of took it to the next level. It was like, I'm going to use this as an opportunity. And over the next few years, kind of really was the ambassador behind medical staff, equipment at races, marshals, fire safety, kind of everything really was really spearheaded by Jackie Stewart at the time. So this is why I say like it's a horrible story in terms of how it happened, but in terms of like a pivotal moment maybe which really saw F1 start thinking, hey, this safety thing maybe should be taken a little bit
Yeah.
more seriously. I think a lot of it came out of the back of this championship.
Yep. And Jochen's daughter, Natasha, later worked with Bernie Ecclestone for years after he took the commercial rights of F1. He was, for anyone who may not know, in addition to working in F1 and with teams, he was then the F1 boss. He was the Stefano Domenicali, but more of an iron-handed kind of, he ran the whole thing himself. And he hired Natasha to work with him. In Austria, the Red Bull Ring, the penultimate corner, is named after Rindt. I didn't know that.
No, I didn't know that either.
And I will watch for that. He'd also worked as a consultant on getting that track built, so he helped kind of get the Red Bull Ring created. In 65, while he was just getting into F1 and becoming big, he put together an exhibition of racing cars in Austria, the Jochen Rindt Show in Vienna. And it was an immediate success, 30,000 visitors on the first weekend. It became an annual event. It was later moved to the German city of Essen in 1970, shortly after his death, and it remains there as the Essen Motor Show. So that's a Jochen Rindt legacy. It's just, the people he touched, the people he was friends with, the web of people he had connections with, really set the foundation for the F1 we see today. And so it's just amazing that we don't talk enough about the 1970 champion who died before he ever saw the trophy, Jochen Rindt.
Yeah, and do you want to close us out with a Sap Stats Jochen Rindt edition?
Let's do it. I'm not going to do music. Too sad. Jochen Rindt did 64 Grand Prix with 4 did not starts over 7 seasons, 37 retirements. 62% of the time he didn't even finish the race because the car was so unreliable. He had 6 wins, 10 pole positions, 3 fastest laps. He had 13 podiums over the course of his career. We kind of talked about the growth of those over time. As the cars got better, he did more. He, as I mentioned, finished first in 1970 as champion. He was 4th in 69. He was 12th and 13th in 68, 67. He did have that one season we referenced in the Cooper, the 66 season, where he finished 3rd in the championship. He had 1 hat trick over the course of his career. And probably the thing that bothered me, settled with me the most, is as we've done this is the second time we've talked about a driver who died at Monza in a Vale's Tale. We haven't done that many Vale's Tales. And by the way, if you want to go check out the other Vale's Tales, they're on the website, dirtysideofthetrack.com. Check out special episodes, and there's a whole Vale's Tales section. You can go back and listen with links. But it's the second time we've talked about a driver who died at Monza. The other one being when we did the Ascari Vale's Tales. Ascari died in 55, kind of in the back part of the track, and that's what they named the Ascari chicane. Is named after him having passed there. And Ascari, again, I know this is 15 years earlier, but if you remember, a week prior he'd gone in Monaco off the track into the harbor and almost drowned.
Yeah.
So, I mean, unfortunately, anytime you go back into the past and talk about a driver, the story is terrible.
Yeah. No, it is. So, no, I think I really enjoyed diving into this. I know, and thank you for putting all the research there because you did this one. But just going over it, watching the videos, I love doing these Vale's Tales where we just dive into a driver, especially when it's one that maybe folk don't know as much. Especially I didn't personally, so I've learned a lot out of this one. So yeah, we need to do another one of these. And if anyone's got any suggestions for drivers they'd like us to do on the Vale's Tales, like Brian says, go and check out the ones to see the ones we've done. But we love doing these.
Yeah,
love jumping in and finding all these historical stories out. So, no, thank you for pulling that one together, Brian. And I think that's probably that for this week, isn't it?
It is. It is. And if I'm doing my math right, next week we'll have a Miami preview?
Think so? Question?
I think that's right. Regardless, we'll be back in 1 week's time. Rob, thanks, man. This was a lot of fun. Sad. Probably the most tragic one we'll cover, but just a great reminder how far F1 has come. And about the 1970 world champion, Jochen Rindt. Everybody, thanks for joining. We'll see you and talk to you in 1 week's time. Be well. Be safe out there.